experimental here, and we'll see how this works. If it works out well, if you're interested in participating, we might do this again. Okay, let's get the show on the road. Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your weekly update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders. I'm your host, Mark Oppenheim, and today is Election Day. We want to do something different, so this is an open mic show on democracy, civil society in America, and in particular, how healthy America's voting system is. If you're interested in commenting, please raise your hand or ask a question. We'll activate your audio so that you can be part of the conversation, and we'll leave it up to you if you wanted to turn on your camera. It would be great to see you as well. So in terms of what we're experiencing right now, it really is historic. We're having early voting in a way that is just completely amazing, with 70% of last election cycle's vote in 2016 already submitted through early voting. We've seen state after state attempt to provide that kind of infrastructure, by their own lights, sometimes with pretty stringent requirements, sometimes with looser requirements. But Americans have basically flocked to the polls of all political stripes to ensure that their vote is counted. And now today, November 3rd, we're having our election day. At the end of the day, the submission of votes will end, but the counting then begins. And it could take quite a while until the various swing states are counted. One of the things that I took a look at as I was researching this show, and please, anyone who would like to comment, we're gonna put you right up here, first with audio, and then the camera can be turned on if you'd like, at your option. One of the things that was interesting to me are two different pieces of information, which I'm going to share with you through screen sharing, just real quick. And this was just so fascinating to me. I took a look at which states use different voting requirements, and this comes off of The Guardian. It's a very interesting table. What you'll see here is that in the darkest colors, these are the states with the greatest voting restrictions, the greatest voting controls, voting safety measures, if you will. And those lighter states are the ones where voting is very, very easy, with very few safety measures or restrictions, depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on. And what's really interesting is the clustering of the states. Here, these states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, Kansas, Iowa, Wisconsin, and so on. You have a whole series of reasonably restrictive voting requirements. Rhode Island would be a northeastern state with pretty significant voting requirements. And then these western states, Washington, Oregon, California. You also have Wyoming, Nebraska, Illinois, Michigan, New York State. They are very, very loose in their voting restrictions. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is if you take a look at, and this comes from Wallet Hub, this is a assessment of influence by vote, by voter, by state. And so what you see here is these darkest states here are the states with the greatest influencer by voter, meaning that your vote in and very often these are lesser populated states, but not always. Look at Texas. Your vote actually has an outsized impact on the elections. There's one on presidential rankings, which you're seeing here, and the Senate rankings are also pretty interesting. You also see that in terms of the fate of the Senate, a voter in Alaska is more influential than a voter in California. And that has to do with whether a state is a swing state, the impact on electoral college votes. I'll leave it to you to take a look at the sites, but it's just very interesting how our elections fall when it comes to, we have a democracy in which every vote counts, but it is certainly true that certain votes count more than others. I do hope that we can get some people to participate. I see some old friends here, and so anybody who would like to make a comment, please submit a question or raise your hand, and we'll try and get you up. In terms of what is going on politically, we're seeing an awful lot of misinformation coming out of various sources. It is certainly being driven by foreign actors. Russia has been playing on this stage for quite a long time. And we see Iran getting involved. We see other foreign actors getting involved. But one of the things that I think distinguishes this year from previous years is the volume of domestic misinformation campaigns that are coming in. And I'd like to have your thoughts on whether that is a valid political tactic. We've always had attack ads, and we've always had a certain amount of disinformation used in these political campaigns, but a lot of that has been based on what side of the fence you're on. It seems right now that we have very purposeful narratives that are being shaped and distributed by internal actors in ways that are not really associated with truth. The people who are pushing these messages don't necessarily believe that the messages themselves are true, but they do understand that they have an effect. And that's the thing that really disturbs me. When you have Americans basically deciding for untruths in order to create a political effect, I just think it's very corrosive to a civil society. And I'm very interested to know what those who are viewing also think about this whole situation. So if anybody would like to make a comment, please raise your hand on this Zoom program, and we'll try and accommodate you. In terms of the other parts of the dynamic at play here, we're also seeing tremendous identity politics being played, in which voters are being urged to vote their identity. You have divisions that are based in economics, geography, the rural city urban area divide, the suburban divide. We're encouraged to divide by race. We're encouraged to divide, sort of by caste or by age. And again, the question becomes: is that really how we want to identify ourselves? We've always been a country where party, certainly since Washington's retirement, party has taken an outsized role in American political life. But the real question to me is, as Americans, don't we transcend party? Can't we start to think in terms of being part of this civil society where we have a social compact that crosses age groups, that crosses races, that crosses religions? And can't we do the same rules? Then that strengthens our society as a whole. Again, it would be just wonderful if we could get some people who are interested in raising their hands. I see some old friends here, and let's have a bit of a discussion in terms of how you feel about this election and how you feel about American democracy. I noticed, let's take a look. We've got, who raised their hands? Oscar, could you help me out here so that I can navigate? I've got a hand raised. Here we go.
Sure.
Oliver, you on?
Yes. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good to hear from you. Oliver lives in the UK. And Oliver, could you give your background, because you've lived in a lot of different states in the United States, and I'm really interested to hear how you are seeing this and how you feel people in the United Kingdom are seeing this election that we're going through.
Yeah, well, quickly to my background, I have lived in several states in the United States, along the Eastern Seaboard, New York and North Carolina in particular, but I've also spent a good deal of my life and my professional career in Europe, in Germany and France, and now we're living in the United Kingdom. And so I guess, proportionately, I'm one of the rare Americans who can bring a slightly different perspective, as yourself, by the way, Mark, to this discussion. And by the way, Mark, I just want to say thanks for hosting this. I think it's a great idea. These are anxious times. I think, in all due respect to both sides of the aisle, I think everybody is on the edge of their seat on this one. It's a particularly trying time where due to the polarization of the political spectrums, I think people are feeling very, very anxious. I certainly am, and just having the opportunity to share perspectives and talk about it is one way of getting through the final stretch of this long and very arduous process. Um, in terms of how people see it over here, it's very, very interesting, because I identify very, very much following the press in France and in Germany, with what would be, I would call it a very centrist position in continental Europe, which would be viewed from an American perspective as a very liberal point of view, which I think has been viewing the United States and what's been going on there these past 4 years quite critically. Um, and I think that there's a lot of hope that we'll return to a degree of normalcy. Great Britain is different, though. We've had our own dealings with populist governments, and populist policies. I mean, Brexit is just that. And I think that there's a strong identification here in this country for Donald Trump and what he represents in terms of sort of that iconoclastic sort of anti-establishment platform that he seems to appeal to. So, you reading the press, you quoted The Guardian earlier. You'll probably get a very, very critical point of view of Trump, but I actually find BBC's coverage has been quite sympathetic often to the Trump government. And so, for what it's worth, I think it would be a toss-up here. I think that Boris Johnson has positioned his government very strongly to be benefiting from a Trump re-election, and I think they may pay a price if things don't go that way. But I guess what I wanted to share to the viewers on this call right now, because I think putting aside all of the surveys and the prognostications of how this all may fall out, is rather a takeaway that I think is inevitable here, whichever way this election comes down. I'd like to try to take a positive out of this, regardless of whether I get my way, so to speak. But that is that I'm very, very encouraged by a development that you referred to, which is the early voting tendencies in the United States. And in particular, what seems to be happening is that we're getting an all-time record turnout. One of the things that I find very disheartening about the United States is that, in spite of it being what is clearly a beacon for a democracy in the world, voter turnout has historically been very, very low amongst democratic countries, and I think it was a significant contributor to the outcome of the election in 2016. People just being apathetic, staying home, not believing that their vote mattered, or believing that the outcome was was inevitable, and therefore their vote was not important. The reason why I think that the turnout is so significant is because I think that it is encouraging the younger generations to be energized, to really give a damn, so to speak. And regardless of the outcome, I'd like to believe that this will have positive implications for the future. I was listening to an interview that Jamie Harrison, a Democratic candidate for the US Senate in South Carolina, was giving to one of the major news networks this morning in the United States. And it doesn't look like Jamie Harrison is going to be successful in his bid to unseat Lindsey Graham for that Senate seat in South Carolina. But he was taking stock of the situation, and his point, which I think stuck with me, and that's what I wanted to share here, is that he feels that no matter what, whether he wins or loses, he feels he has already won in terms of the feedback that he's received by the youth of the voting electorate in South Carolina as to how much they have been inspired by his efforts to challenge sort of the traditional political thought process in what has been for a long time now a very, very conservative state.
I'm finding the same thing. I'm finding that my kids are less enamored with political parties. They are questioning a lot going out there. We got a question coming in, and actually a comment more that is very interesting. I'd like to have your opinion on it. There's the whole question of has the Trump administration done an unexpected service by showing the fractures in our society, by revealing some of the issues with checks and balances, that our elections are becoming lawsuit central as everybody argues over stuff. It looks as if one of the things that's happening here is that we get to examine ourselves, whether it's internationally in terms of our alliances and the international world order, which is so often relied on America to do so much. And maybe this is a way to take stock of so many different aspects of our democracy and our involvement in the world. Do you feel from your perspective that the Europeans are looking at it from that perspective? And I would also be very interested in trying to get your sense of your family in North Carolina and how they're seeing this whole situation.
Yeah, listen, family in North Carolina, I think are very, very anxious and I think guardedly optimistic, but concerned, right? I mean, the other day, I have a daughter at the University of North Carolina, and there was a gunman running rampant on campus, and it was scary for we as parents to be sitting so far away, knowing that there are people who feel so anxious about this that they have to go out and express themselves in manners that can be harmful to other people. I'm not saying that this person was necessarily politically motivated, but I am aware of the fact that there are people who may resort to such measures in order to express their dismay or their political opinion in whichever way they see things. So I think that there are very, very anxious times in states that are on the cusp of that sort of changeover. You have the deep red states that are rock solid, and they're probably feeling very comfortable, at least as far as their participation in this electoral process. There are deep blue states like California, New York, that feel comfortable that they've done everything they can. But then there are going to be those changeover states North Carolina, potentially Georgia, Wisconsin, Ohio,
Florida. Mhm.
where I think tensions may really boil over, and then we can see some real challenges. But go
And
ahead.
incidentally, if anybody else wants to raise their hand, please do. It would be great to have more participation in this discussion. It's very important that we talk to each other. I mean, one of the things that we're doing is we each go into our little red state or blue state or whatever it is, our party affiliations. We stop talking to each other. Are you finding in terms of your associations that people are making an extra effort to talk to each other, or going into their corners and avoiding things, Oliver? I mean, we at Oppenheim, at the firm with Nonprofit Report, we make an extra effort to talk with people of all sorts of different views. How are you finding this? Are people moving into their corners, or are they trying to reach out?
That's an interesting question, Mark, because of course, let's just say early on during the Trump administration, I think there was a lot more willingness to talk openly. And I think it's because many people who I know and respect, who support Donald Trump or supported Donald Trump, were of the opinion that the guy, one should give him the chance. And then later on, maybe in the second or third year, the question was, there are policies that they supported of his, deregulation or lower taxes or whatnot. I think COVID changed that, though. I think that COVID dramatically changed that, so that I think you have very, very vocal Trump supporters who I think will follow him to the ends of the earth. I think others, are holding on, obviously, because the election, even though the pollsters are saying there's a 90% chance of Biden winning, there's still a 10% chance of Trump winning. And that's not just his base. There are other people. And those people, I think, I no longer encounter. I mean, my everyday, work interactions, if there are Trump supporters amongst them, they are no longer espousing the type of support. Give him a chance was the early on, or I support some of his policies. That has sort of disappeared from the landscape.
Do you think that there's fear that has entered into this, fear of getting into a fight with a friend, or fear of being sanctioned in some way for your views, as opposed to being able to share and be passionate and just go away friends?
Well, you know me, Mark. I'm not going to shy away from expressing my opinion, even if my wife is kicking me under the table and we're, at a deeply conservative a dinner party or something like that. But it's an interesting question if I generalize it more. I do think that in the United States, we are lacking the dialogue. I do find, when I am in the United States, compared to maybe 10, 20 years ago, I think people are much more reticent, hesitant to engage in discussions about political issues. And I think that hurts ultimately, because that kind of intergroup contact, intergroup interaction is important to help round out opinions. And without that kind of interaction, I think it leads to polarization, and falling back into comfort zones, which can be very dangerous.
So how do we deal with that, right? If what we're actually doing is just talking in our bubbles, and if we know that that's bad, how do we deal with that? Because we cannot be isolated. We must take collective action. We must be able to find solutions that incorporate the concerns of different people, even people whose positions we currently feel are invalid, right? They hold them for reasons that, and there are collectives that hold those positions for reasons that they feel are very important, and we must be able to listen, right? And they have to listen to other people who might have other views, or ourselves. How do we forge the kind of collective, peaceful, democracy building action that welcomes input? Do we have to change how we communicate?
Well, I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, and that is people feeling more comfortable. First of all, people feeling motivated, incentivized to get involved and have a political opinion. And then we have to encourage people to talk, okay? Without the vitriol that is currently being introduced into the political dialogue. You know, we have to express tolerance and understanding, and understand that it's okay for us. I mean, to get to your previous question, to have differences of opinion on the political spectrum, but nevertheless remain friends at the end of the day. It's all about, you know, having respect for one another, and respecting one another's opinion, having hearty discussions, and parting friends.
Yeah, I think that really is key. You know, I noticed among the attendees there are some people in the Bay Area. We're doing work for a wonderful organization that provides services to youth. I see some people from Houston, from all across the East Coast, from the center of the country, from the Midwest. And one of the things that really binds us all together is that everybody that we deal with is trying to strengthen America in some way. And that's not dependent on political affiliation. It's dependent on values and an affinity for community, and a desire to advance some social good by your own lights. Sometimes if you just shut up and listen, you get insights that you don't otherwise have, and that's the intention of this show. I'm so happy you called in, Oliver, and really enjoyed the conversation. I hope others who witnessed it do too. If there's anyone else who would like to chat, please raise your hand. We're going to end this program in a couple of minutes. But I do have an ask for everybody who's watching. If you could send us comments on this idea of call-in shows and interactivity, particularly when we're interviewing people on different topics. And we, as you know, we interview people on all sorts of different issues: workforce development, poverty, exiting incarceration, the arts, theater, all sorts of different free knowledge, education, environment, all sorts of different issues. And we're trying to improve the show. We're trying to make it more engaging. So your comments are really going to be helpful. And on the 12th, we're going to have another call-in show where we're going to talk about media and the use of media to advance nonprofit agendas. We hope that you all attend. So thank you all. Oliver, thank you so much for calling in from the UK and giving us your multinational experience. And everyone, that's the Nonprofit Report. Stay safe, and we'll see you this Thursday. We have a great show. It's going to be on law enforcement and educating the next generation of police officers. Have a great day. Take care.